Hi, good afternoon. Welcome to Pure Storage Top Customer Day 2022. My name is Meng, and today I'm going to share with you what's the next generation data management. As we all know, data is the foundation of the businesses today. And regardless of which industry you are in, data allows you to gain insight into your business and know more about your customers. Cloud Native Stack is a very popular framework that has been used to achieve this purpose. But what exactly is Cloud Native Stack? Well, the researchers pretty much are all saying the same thing. It is all about containers and Kubernetes. 451 Research, for example, said that 95% of the new apps will be developed in containers. Gartner echoed their view, and Gartner even predicted that by 2025, 85% of the global businesses will be running containers in production. I'm sure you have heard of Kubernetes, and you know that since its release in 2015, it has been gaining popularity, and now it's really coming fast and furious. And why is that so? One of the reasons is it is very robust. You are able to run a lot of applications, different types of application, a myriad of them on Kubernetes. And what powers these applications are what we call pods, which is basically just a group of containers. And one of the key value propositions of Kubernetes is that it is agnostic of the underlying infrastructure. With Kubernetes, your application can run in the public cloud, like the AWS, Azure, or GCP. It can run inside your data center that's powered by your traditional enterprise vendors like Dell, IBM, HP, NetApp, or Pure. It can also run as a managed Kubernetes service inside the cloud. And within a Kubernetes cluster itself, pods are extremely agile. You are able to move your pods around. You are able to spin up new pods. You are able to scale down the pods. But when pods are with data, which is what we call a stateful app, this is where when you want to move these stateful apps around, things are no longer so straightforward. Kubernetes today do not support moving of persistent volume, for example, from one cluster to another. As a result, even though your applications are agile, you can move your applications around, your data don't move. So this is a likely scenario that's going to happen. So what we really need is really a data management solution for Kubernetes, whereby we are able to reduce the data gravity. At the same time, we will allow the persistent volume to be as agile and move along together with the pods. So this is exactly what Portworx does. So Portworx is the data management solution for Kubernetes, and Portworx virtualize the underlying storage arrays. So it doesn't matter whether you're running it from the cloud. We can virtualize any of the cloud devices like AWS EBS. We can also virtualize your underlying enterprise storage arrays that are inside your data centers. And we can also run within a managed Kubernetes environment. Secondly, Portworx, this management layer, it is stretched across two different Kubernetes clusters, and they can be heterogeneous. In other words, you can have OpenShift on one side, and then you can have a totally different distribution like EKS, AKS, Tanzu on the other side. And with this, technically, you can run your DR in any data center if you like. You don't even need to run it within your own private data center. You can have a DR that's running off a cloud provider that is powered by not your traditional storage array, but powered by their own cloud devices. So with this, now you will realize that your applications together with the persistent volume, it is now portable. You can now move your entire app from your data center to any data center in the DR, in the peacetime, anytime, any way you want it to be. Now, let's first of all understand why the applications, why the enterprises choose containers and Kubernetes in the first place. Enterprises wants to be agile. Enterprises wants to be able to launch their services fast, and hence they choose containers. Why? Because containers make the application agile, make the application portable. And as you have more and more containers, you need a system to help you to manage your life cycle of all these containers. This is where Kubernetes comes in very well, because Kubernetes makes these containers agile and provides the life cycle management. Then the question is, what about the data? So when you have data inside your Kubernetes, your data needs to be as agile as your application. So this is where Portworx comes in. Portworx does what Kubernetes do for containers. Portworx makes the data agile. Portworx makes the data synchronized across different Kubernetes clusters. Now, but that's not the only challenge that you will face other than the data availability. In Kubernetes itself, we know that you are going to run a lot of different applications that are served out by different business, owned by different business units, developed by different DevOps teams. And maybe perhaps you even have different environments, you have production, UAT, test, dev, everything within the same Kubernetes cluster. So the question is, how do you manage access to your data? So take, for example, you may have an application that has sensitive data, PDPA. Obviously, you do not want that particular persistent volume to be mounted by mistake by another application. So how do you control the access control? This is where with Portworx, you can have container granular access control, what we call RBAC, role-based access control, where you can define which developer, which application can actually mount that particular persistent volume. Secondly, encryption. We know that data today, you want to encrypt it, right? And there are a lot of solutions out there. You can choose to encrypt it inside your storage array, or you can encrypt it as a cluster-wide. But like I mentioned earlier, a Kubernetes deployment, chances are it is going to be multi-tenancy. You're going to have different types of applications running on top. So having a single security policy encryption key for all the applications that are belonging to different business groups is not going to make it. So you need a solution that allows you to bring your own key, a solution that allows you to encrypt the persistent volume on the individual basis. Next, let's talk a bit about backup. So enterprises who have embarked on Kubernetes, chances are you are on this journey towards agile, towards this multi-cloud, right? So you are likely going to have your DevOps team, you're going to have a CI/CD deployment. So what you need, it is really a cloud native backup that can integrate into your CI/CD pipeline. Not only that, this backup that you need has to be application consistent. It needs to give you the ability to define what we call as an atomic group, where you can specify which are the applications and what are the persistent volume that needs to be grouped together so that it is consistent. Either the whole transaction happens or the whole transaction is rollback. Now, when you have the ability to do this, you want to make sure that your backup, it is not just backing up of the application or the data. You want to make sure that your backup addresses both the application and the data itself. Because when you are able to back up everything about the application, including its data, it is just like a Docker container. It becomes portable. So whatever that you back up, you can restore it to any environment as long as it's Kubernetes. It doesn't have to be the same Kubernetes as the original. Now, let's talk a bit about performance, because this is a very interesting topic. So some of you may have heard that Kubernetes is not very suitable to run stateful apps like a database. Because of performance, because of many reasons. Actually, there is some truth in this, because Kubernetes, by design, it is place more emphasis, more importance to the uptime of the service. If you need the performance, you can always scale it out. You can always have more instances. But for some applications, such as databases, latency can be a very important consideration, an important factor. So with Portworx, what we do is that we influence Kubernetes scheduler on where to schedule a new pod. Take, for example, if this is a database, you are going to schedule a database application, and you know that this database, the persistent volume is going to serve out of, let's say, worker node 2, for example. So in this case, what Portworx will do is that Portworx will influence the Kubernetes scheduler to say that, hey, Mr. Scheduler, when you are scheduling this database app, please schedule it to on worker node 2. Why? Because its persistent volume is served out worker node 2. So in this case, you have the application and its data are all residing within the same worker node. And we call this hyperconvergence, because the data and the application are all served out within the same worker node. There's no need to leave the worker node itself. Next, we have this analytical tool engine that is running within the system, where we monitor the I/O of every single persistent volume. So when we identify a certain profile, for example, if it's a database, so when it's a database, typically database will perform this thing called database DB cache flushing, which is pretty bad for Kubernetes. So there's a huge performance impact on Kubernetes. So what we do is that the moment we identify that this is a database, we will automatically apply the DB profile, and we will batch all these DB cache flushing to give you better performance. Or if we identify that maybe now in this case, you matches a certain pattern, which looks like a sequential read, perhaps you are doing a backup operation, what we do is then we apply a sequential profile to improve the performance. So today we support 5 different types of I/O profiles, and we can apply these profiles automatically without human intervention. Then let's talk a little bit about scalability. So we know that today CSI, you are able to scale your persistent volume from 10 gig to 20 gig real time, but you can't really, you still need a human, you still need some scripts to help you with that. With Portworx, you have the ability to configure what we call an autopilot. Basically, that is the auto scaling policy where you can specify, for example, this particular persistent volume, which is 10 gigabyte, the moment it hits 80%, double the size of it. So for example, this 10 gigabyte persistent volume, once the utilization hit 80%, and that's about 8 gigabyte, then we will automatically increase the size of the persistent volume from 10 gigabyte to 20 gigabyte. And this is actually very important in the cloud deployment, where it can give you a lot of cost savings, because in the cloud environment, you are charged based on utilization. Then last but not least, I just want to cover a little bit on that data availability that we spoke about. So we know that in storage, in data, there is this redundancy technology called RAID, which is very common in storage arrays and the LANs that you can configure. But in a persistent volume, is literally non-existent. There is no RAID or its equivalent technology in a persistent volume. So what happens when a worker node is down? Kubernetes scheduler will reschedule the affected pods onto any of the surviving worker nodes. So that's fine, right? But all these survived worker nodes, applications in these worker nodes, will have to re-establish the connectivity to the LAN itself. So in this case, if it's the iSCSI, then we re-establish an iSCSI connection. So as a result, there's going to be a little bit of downtime due to data reconnection. But with Portworx, we allow you to configure up to 3 copies of a replica. So think of these replicas as a mirror copy at the persistent volume level. So in the same scenario, whereby worker node 1 is offline for whatever reason, we still have a mirror copy of the persistent volume in worker node 2 and 3, for example. So in this case, we will influence the Kubernetes scheduler again to say that, hey, Mr. Scheduler, for this application, this pod that's being affected, please reschedule it to either worker node 2 or worker node 3. Why? Because we have an existing replica of the persistent volume in these 2 worker nodes. So when Kubernetes schedule the pod in worker node 2 or 3, the persistent volume is already there. There's no need to re-establish or reconnect the data. Right, so as a result, there is no data loss. So in fact, later I'm going to share a use case with you, which is showcase this is one of the main reasons for them. Then last but not least, it is really about disaster recovery. With Portworx, you have the ability to replicate your data from one cluster to another. So for instance, you can replicate your persistent volume that's running in your production into the other site, which could be called a DR. And if the round trip time, the distance is short enough, less than 10 milliseconds, for example, you can configure a synchronous replication. So basically at any point in time, this is a 0 RPO. There's absolutely no data loss. The volume on the production and the DR side, it is always synchronous. And if the distance between the 2 sites are a bit further, more than 10 milliseconds, for example, round trip, then we can configure as an async. In this case, then the distance is no longer a concern. So with this, let me just quickly share with you a customer of ours Roblox, some of you may know, especially for the gamers, they are very popular gaming platform. In fact, today they have 70 million gamers on this platform itself. Right. So what happened is that, as we all know, online gaming is extremely sensitive to latency. In fact, any form of latency, whether it's a network or is it I/O or storage. Right. So as they were scaling on these, they came to us about in 2019. They were having this challenge of re-platforming their platform, the gaming platform, from Windows to Linux containers. So as with all organizations, they started with a small pilot. They did some testing on the Linux containers, and they realized that the agility and the performance that containers are promised, and they got more and more excited. With more experience, they started to bring on more microservices onto their platform. So they have GraphQL, they have MongoDB, and they started to bring all these applications there. And because they are supporting 70 million gamers, they realized that the management of all these services, it is a nightmare for them, especially from a data point of view. So this is where they realized the CSI that comes with all the different Kubernetes or container orchestration system, it is just not performing enough. They've analyzed Kubernetes, they've analyzed Nomad, and finally they decided on Nomad. But still, the CSI is not to their expectation. So they found Portworx, and what we did was we did a POC with them. We showcased everything that I've shown you earlier in the previous slide. So we did all of those. But there's one of the features that really stood out for them, and that is the data availability. So what happened was that they configured 3 copies of that persistent volume, and they shut down one of the worker nodes. And the system is works as per normal. There's no downtime at all. So they shut down the second worker node. And the gaming experience, it is seamless. Again, the gamers didn't realize that a worker node was down. So this gives them a lot of confidence. And today, they are actually one of our largest customers. And they have since moved a lot more applications onto this Nomad platform, things like Crocus DB, Elastic, and now they are moving more and more. And it's all powered by Portworx. So last but not least, I just want to leave this message with you, is that in your journey to digital transformation, probably Kubernetes or some container orchestration platform is going to be your technology companion for a long time. Let's not forget about the data. Right, so Portworx can be your single data management solution for your Kubernetes platform, and therefore allow you to gain insight, allow you to be more productive in time to market. Let us be your technology partner. With that, thank you very much for your time, and I wish you all the best and have a good conference. Thank you again. Bye.